Hello everyone, welcome to the video about the Kombucha Lab Notebook. I do not know how long this video will be, but this is really important, so you need to stick with it, even if it means fast forwarding me or whatever. The Lab Notebook is what you'll create every week that will, where you'll write about what you've done in lab that week, the observations that you make, what they mean, and then what you're going to be doing in the future. The lab notebook is worth the most points each week. So it's really important that you understand what you're doing so that you can do it well. There are lots of resources for this in your lab manual. You can also ask the TA in your lab and ask your instructor. So we want you to be successful with this. It's not worth a lot of points because we expect it to be tricky and we want you to fail. It's worth a lot of points because it's important that you get it right. All right, so in the lab manual, you will find lab notebook overall guidelines. Okay, is everybody there? This is page 29. And so this tells you, somewhat obviously, the overall guidelines of the notebook. And so the notebook every week will be written in this order. Notebook must always be in this order. You are each going to write a different part of the notebook, and the notebook pages are loose leaf, so you can write them in whatever order, but when they get back into the binder, they will need to be in this order. So number 1, group members and plan. Number 2, flowchart. I'll show you what all this means. Number 3, results, which is going to be text results, which is written stuff, as well as non-text results, which is photos and graphs. Conclusions, what the results tell you, what you're going to do as a result of that. Procedures is what you're doing today. And so since the kombucha is fermented and we're working with the microbes which have to grow, you'll come in and you'll have results and conclusions based on the work that you did last time, which has fermented or grown, and you'll have procedures based on the work you're doing today, experimental design, and then the next steps is what you're going to be doing next time. So this is the order that the notebook needs to be in. These are some general guidelines for everyone. Each of these components can be on its own page. It is very important that these components be easy to find. So you'll be graded on this. Please do not make things harder for the person grading you. So make all of the headings really well labeled, easy to find. And then if there's not something to do for that week, you should still write the heading and then write something like no results this week or no conclusions today or something. If you just skip it, then the person grading you doesn't know that you know that it's supposed to be there. So important that you communicate effectively by how you keep the notebook with the person grading you so they'll be able to give you the most points possible. Your notebook should include all of the writing that you do. So if you write on a scratch paper, that needs to go in your notebook, like for your math part. You can write it complete sentences, but you don't need to. Bullets are fine. It is important that you write only on the fronts of the pages. It's also important that you communicate when you're finished. So when you're finished, if there's a big space that's 3 or more lines on the notebook paper, you're going to draw an X through it. When you make a mistake, you draw 1 line through, not 2 lines, not 3 lines. Don't scribble it out. Don't white it out. 1 line through, and then keep going. Anything that is not 1 line through will cost you points. So 1 line through, and then keep going. And then you'll need to include the notebook grading rubric, which your instructor will show you where those are. So one of the goals for the Kombucha Lab is that each of you be good at keeping a lab notebook. In order for you to realize this goal, you need to have some opportunity to do all of the parts of the notebook. If you only ever do person B, then all you learn is person B, and you don't know how to do the whole notebook. And so to help you to be good at the whole notebook, every week you will change jobs. I do realize that this will feel very frustrating to you. You'll be like, I just felt like I got good at person B, and now I have to be person C. But one of the big overarching goals of the Kombucha Lab is to prepare you for the future. And if we let you only get good at person B and never learn anything else, it feels comfortable now, but we're actually hurting you in the future, which is not what we want. And so we're going to make you do all the different jobs, even though it's going to feel uncomfortable now. It's going to make you more prepared for later. So these are the different notebook roles, A, B, C, D, E, F. If your lab group is 6 people, then this is what you all do. If your lab group is 5 people, this is how it changes. And then if your lab group is 4 people, this is how it changes. Okay, so you move like essentially forward. So if I was person A this week, then the next week I would be person B, and then whoever was person F is going to become person A. So A goes to B, B goes to C, C goes to D, D goes to E, E goes to F, F goes to A. So you rotate jobs every week. Typically, you'll each be able to have each job twice, unless your group is really small. So as we go forward in the lab manual, for each of the people, so person A, person B, etc., there's notebook directions, tells you what you're supposed to do, any special directions that you have, how your notebook role changes as the group changes, and then which sections you're responsible for. So again, here's person B, here's what person B does, any special directions for person B, how their job changes with group size, which sections they do, person C, their job, special notes, changes with group size, what they do, etc. Person D does conclusions. Conclusions are pretty tricky, so here's some example conclusions for them to look at. And then normal, how their role changes with group size, which sections they do. So there's one of these for each person in the notebook. Then is a sample lab notebook entry. So this lab notebook entry has 5 people. So they would follow like this notebook role 5-person group. So it lists for you the group members, plan for the day. Here is a big space, so it got X'd out. This is somewhat obviously typed, but is modeled after an actual student notebook. Every page needs title and date and group number. The next page is the flowchart, and so person A is responsible to make the flowchart. When you are person A, the flowchart is due on Moodle as a PDF at least 1 hour before your lab. So if you have an 8 a.m. lab Tuesday or Thursday, your flowchart is due at or before 7 a.m. So just do it the night before. But this is what goes into your flowchart. There's directions for the flowchart elsewhere in the lab manual. But since this is a page of the lab notebook, it needs title, date, and group. So it shows like who's going to do which things. This particular group opted to color code their flowchart. You don't have to do that. The flowchart does need to have what is going to be happening, why it's going to be happening, and an indication of the order. So it has to have arrows. It can't just be like sections of text with no arrows is not a flowchart. So be sure that you have what's happening, why it's happening, and who and the order. If you have a big project in lab like this teal box that is being done by Emma, Peyton, and Ashley, it's really important that you indicate who is doing which part of that. And so even though this big box has Emma, Peyton, and Ashley, there's little boxes each for Emma, Peyton, and Ashley. Is somewhere, Ashley. So the flowchart needs to say what you're doing, who's doing which part, why you're doing it, and then the order. It can be color-coded or not. Has to be on Moodle an hour before. Okay. The next page after the flowchart is the results. And so again, each page of the notebook has to have title, date, whoopsie, group number. The results is going to be the results of the previous fermentation or growth. And so this will be the jar that they made last week or 2 weeks ago. In the lab manual, so text results is the job of person B. I'm just going to scroll back up there so you can see. It's going to take me a minute. Person B. And so it says, for kombucha jars, record the results according to page 63 in the lab manual. So if you go to page 63, it will tell you what characteristics to write down and how to take your pictures. So just go to page 63 and do that. Okay, back to the notebook. And so this is what you're supposed to write down. So they have indicated this stuff is for the control jar. This information is for the experimental jar. They added Gatorade to their jar. For non-text results is pictures or graphs. You have to take a picture, name it something specific. So this cannot be a name that you ever use again. You upload this picture or graph with its specific name to your group's OneDrive folder, which will be, like, there'll be a link for that on Moodle, or if you go into OneDrive, you should have like something that says shared. You should be able to click and it'll be in there. So you upload to the OneDrive folder. And then you also write the name of the picture and then say a description of what's in the picture. Okay, so you take the picture, name the picture something distinctive, upload it to your OneDrive folder, write the name of the picture, say what it's about. So this group took 2 pictures this week, so they have that. Next page has the conclusions, sample lab notebook entry. So conclusions is done by a different person. Conclusions is person D. And so again, the notebook is going to be loose leaf. So person D has just taken a sheet of paper, written conclusions, and then they're finished. They did not use the whole sheet, so they're going to X out the whole bottom. This is fine. You do not need to like wait for the person ahead of or behind you to finish. You can just get your own sheet of paper, write your part, X out the bottom. The conclusion needs to briefly recap the results and then have an explanation about why the results are happening. If you don't have the explanation, you will not get all the points. So it's really important that you have an explanation. And this is why, if you have, well, whenever you watch the week 2 video, the week 2 video goes on and on about how important it is to understand the explanation. It's because it's worth a lot of points here for person D. Okay, next page is procedures. So this is what is happening in lab today. So again, you have title for the week, date, group, lab time, group, procedures. So for procedures, you write what you're doing, list of the procedures that you're doing, as well as whether you made any changes. So you can write what changes you made, or you write we made no changes, or you do both. So that's procedures. And then the next section is experimental design. And each of these sections that are done by a different person are in a different font. So hopefully that makes it easy for you to tell. So again, we have title, group, date, and then this is what the experimental design person does, lists the variables, writes the hypotheses, and then the experimental design person also does next steps, which is what is happening next week in lab. And then they X out the bottom. Next steps also includes supplies needed. So this is just a bullet list, and who's doing which part of the notebook next week, and then X out the bottom. Okay. Here are some videos for each section if you need them. Very importantly, here is the notebook grading rubric. And I know it's hard to read slantwise, so I'm going to show it to you in a different format. Okay, just hang in there. I know this video is getting long, but this is important, and I wanted it to all be one video. So this is the rubric. This is for the 6-person group because I didn't want to include all the rubrics in the lab manual. When you are in lab, you will get a rubric each week. You'll write your name. So like whoever was person A, put their name here. Whoever's person B, put their name here, etc. And so there will be different rubrics for the 6-person, the 5-person, and the 4-person. But in the lab manual is only the 6-person. Okay. So here is the way that the rubric is organized. The first column is what you are supposed to do. The first column is the ideal situation. If you don't meet everything in the first column, then you go into the other columns. So here is what I would do if I was you. I would turn to, let me get back to the lab manual. Sorry, just don't look while I'm doing this. Okay, now you can look. So I would find the person whatever notebook directions. Okay, so you find that and you do those directions either as written here or as specified in the pages of the lab manual. You also look at the rubric and you look in this first column and you do whatever is listed there. So if you do everything in the first column, then you should get first column points, which gets you 100%. If you don't do everything in the first column, then you get some sort of fractional points. We are going for all the points. We want you to get all the points. So look at the notebook directions and look at the first column. The rubric is really long because it's tried to be very detailed so you know exactly what to do. So please work through this. Your notebook is due the same time as your post labs. So by midnight the day after your lab. So if you don't finish your notebook, you can come back and work on it as long as it's done by midnight the next day. Okay. So here's the person A rubric is quite long. Person A has lots of stuff to do. Here is the person B rubric. So person B does text results. So they write stuff and then they take pictures. They don't take pictures. They just write stuff. Pictures is person C. Okay, so person C, it says all expected result files uploaded with specific names. Here's the type of the file it should be. Here's information about what the picture should look like. This is just the general lab notebook writing stuff, like X out if you have a lot of lines, if you have a mistake, one line through, etc. Person D does conclusions, and so half of your conclusion points are talk about the results, half of your conclusion points are explain the results. This is why it's super important that you each understand and be able to explain the results, person E, person F. And so, again, you'll change jobs every week, but by looking at the notebook directions and by going through the rubric, it should help you to see what you need to do. When you get a new notebook job, then you should look at the grading rubric for last week. So if I am newly person C, whatever, I've never been person C before, I'm going to look at how last week's person C was graded and see if they lost points, what they did or did not do in order to lose points so that I can be sure to do that. So even though you're only going to do each job a couple times, you'll always be able to see the grading sheet for your whole group. And so you can look at that and get information about what you need to change to help you to be successful.